Hi, I'm Ruben Saltzman with Structure Tech Home Inspections, and today I have an update on carbon monoxide alarms for Minnesota. Yeah, I know. I recorded a video about this just last April 2019, but there's a couple of problems here. Number one, I had really long hair in that video. Look at that. Get a haircut, you dirty hippie. Yeah, so that's a problem. Another problem is the rules have changed here in Minnesota. We adopted a new state building code this year, and the requirements for CO alarms were greatly expanded. We used to have like just two little paragraphs in the old residential building code for Minnesota, but now we've got it's almost a full page of requirements. So I'm not going to go over every little detail today, but I do want to kind of hit the highlights. So if we're going to talk about carbon monoxide alarms, let's first start off with some definitions. What's carbon monoxide? Odorless, colorless, tasteless, deadly gas. Usually the way it gets into houses is from fuel burning appliances, but if you also have a garage attached to your home and you leave a door open and a vehicle running in there, you could have it coming in that way too. You could also do some really stupid stuff like running a generator inside your house, or running some type of propane heater inside your house. There's all kinds of ways that people could create carbon monoxide. The problem is it makes people sleepy, and then it makes them sick, maybe not in that order, and people pass out, and then they could die. So we don't want to have carbon monoxide. That's what it is. And let me also be specific here. Carbon monoxide is CO. 1C10. Carbon monoxide, mono, that means one. A lot of people refer to CO2 detectors. There's no such thing. I mean, there is, but nothing that you're ever going to find on a home. So the term is CO, carbon monoxide. Another thing to be aware of is that there are no requirements related to CO alarms in Minnesota related to real estate. All of these requirements are either a statute where it just says you need to have them, or it's a building code requirement that gets triggered by new construction or some type of remodeling or addition or something like that. It has nothing to do with real estate. Okay, so now that we got that out of the way, let's talk about some specific requirements here that we have in Minnesota. Number one, we got the statutes. Statutes just apply to buildings and homes and multifamily dwellings and all that other stuff. It's not triggered by anything. It just says this is what you need. And it's statute 299F.50 talks about some of the definitions, and then 299F.51 deals with the specific requirements in Minnesota. They're pretty vague. .50, the one thing to take away there is what they consider installed. Installed means that you can have it mounted on a wall, you could have it plugged into an outlet or receptacle, or you could have it hardwired. Any of those are fine. They don't say that you could have battery operated on a ceiling, but I think that would meet the intent. Another thing to be aware of is that they say that it needs to be UL 2034 listed. And that means it's a carbon monoxide alarm. You can buy these low-level CO monitors, and I'll come back to those in a minute. You can buy those, but those are not going to be listed. So you need a UL listed CO alarm to satisfy the requirement. So we talked about what it is, we talked about where it must be, and now where do you need them? You need them within 10 feet of sleeping rooms. That's it. There's a bunch of other rules regarding multifamily dwellings and what the owner of those dwellings is responsible for and what the tenants are responsible for and how you're not supposed to remove batteries and all that other stuff. But as a home inspector, I'm not super concerned about all that stuff. All I care about is you need these devices. Make sure you have a CO alarm installed within 10 feet of every sleeping room. Now, when we get down to the building code, like I said, there's a lot of new requirements in Minnesota, and these are all covered under section R315 in the Minnesota State Residential Building Code. So we have the same requirement for the UL listing. All the CO alarms that we install need to be listed by UL 2034, and they need to be installed within 10 feet of every sleeping room, but we're also specific saying outside the sleeping room. It's required to be installed outside the sleeping room, and we also get specific and say that you need it on every level where you have sleeping areas. So if you have, like, a 5-foot stairway going down, you can't put it at the bottom of that stairway. It needs to be on the same level as the sleeping room. And then we also added some language in there saying that if you have a gas-fired appliance in your bedroom or in a bathroom that's connected to the bedroom, you also need to have a CO alarm installed inside that bedroom. So that's a new requirement that we never used to have. And you might be thinking to yourself, how could you even have a gas appliance in your bedroom? Well, you could have a direct vent appliance, such as a gas fireplace or a sealed combustion Category 4 direct vent furnace. It's actually acceptable to have those in your bedroom. It's not typical, don't see a whole lot of those, but it actually is legal. So if you have one of those situations, you need to have the CO alarm installed in that room in addition to the ones that are required outside the room. These requirements apply to all new construction homes in Minnesota, and it also gets triggered if you're doing some type of remodel that requires a building permit, and it would require the inspector to enter the home. If you're pulling a building permit that's only dealing with things outside the house, like maybe adding on a deck or doing just roofing or siding, something like that, and the building official never has to come in, you don't need to do CO alarms. But if it's something like windows, where it involves both the inside and the outside, or doors, things like that, that does require the installation of a CO alarm. It triggers this requirement, and you essentially need to bring it up to today's standards for a new construction home. And like I said, it needs to be within 10 feet of every room, but there's some new stuff there too. It needs to be hardwired, and there's a little asterisk kind of it. It says it needs to be hardwired provided the home is connected to a commercial power source. I don't know what that means. I have never inspected a home in my life that wasn't connected to a commercial power source, but I guess somebody felt it was important to put that in the code. I don't care enough to research that requirement, but so if you're connected to a commercial power source, your CO alarm needs to be hardwired, and that's what you have on new homes. But they say on an existing home, there's an exception. If you need to tear open your walls and your ceilings to add in some hardwiring, and it's not being done as part of the remodel, well then you're okay not having to hardwire it. You can actually just do a battery-powered CO alarm. But all of the CO alarms need to be powered by battery in case the power goes off. So no matter what you do, you're gonna have to put a battery in there if you're meeting the requirement from the state building code. And then another thing that we started adding is the requirement to have it interconnected. That's something that never used to be in the code, but it's in there now, and it basically says that if one CO alarm goes off, they all go off. And the easiest way to do that is to have them interconnected with wires, but again, if you're not going to hardwire them, it's okay to do it wirelessly. We've got smart CO alarms today where you can install a bunch of them all over the house, and they wirelessly transmit a signal to the other one. So if one goes off, they all go off. That's another acceptable way of meeting today's standards. And then there's also an exception in the code that says if you have CO detectors, now not the same as an alarm. An alarm is a self-contained unit. It has a detection device and some type of siren built in to sound off if CO levels get out of hand. That's an alarm. A detector is just a device that measures the CO. It may or may not have an alarm connected to it. If you have say a whole house alarm system and you have remote detection stations, those might be an acceptable alternative to what's required by code. So we do give an allowance for the people who have those systems. So those are the requirements by the Minnesota statute and the Minnesota State Building Codes. And then one more note from me about low levels of carbon monoxide. I talked about UL 2034. This is a standard of life safety for carbon monoxide alarms. It says when they must go off, but it also talks about when they must not go off. When you have carbon monoxide levels below 30 parts per million, and just to put that into perspective, if I'm going to give out numbers, if you are exposed to CO levels around 35 parts per million for somewhere in the neighborhood of 6 to 8 hours, you start experiencing headaches and dizziness. So it affects people at 35 parts per million. It's bad news. You don't want any carbon monoxide in your home. But when CO levels are below 30, CO alarms cannot sound off. That's the rule. The idea is, I guess, we don't want to have a bunch of nuisance alarms and have emergency response people coming out to houses needlessly when people's lives aren't really in danger. So below 30, no alarm. If the levels are between 30 and 69 parts per million for 30 consecutive days, then the alarm will sound. But if it's below 70 for, say, 29 days, it's at 60 parts per million for 29 days in a row, and then it drops down to, say, 25 parts per million for one day, and then it goes back up again, that CO alarm will never sound off. You understand the gravity of this? It's telling you that CO alarms are not health devices. They're there to keep you from dying. Now, in my own house, I have installed, well, I shouldn't say installed, it's sitting on my nightstand. I've got a low-level carbon monoxide monitor. Now, this is more of a health device. It's a lot more expensive than your traditional CO alarm, and it doesn't take the place of a CO alarm. It's not recognized by the building code, but I think it's a really smart thing to have in your home. And there's a bunch of them out there on the market. I mean, mine happens to be made by Defender. There's also ones out there by a company called CO Experts. And then I believe First Alert came out with their own version of this too. And it's not a UL listed unit, but it sells for like 50 bucks. I think they call it like an ultra sensitive carbon monoxide monitor. It's a really good idea to put one of those in your own house. Now, again, not required, but that is my advice. Go out and pick up one of those and have at least one in your home for added health safety for you and your family. Okay, that's all I can think about to talk about today. I think that covers all of the newest requirements for CO alarms. I'll see you next time, and my hair will be nice and short, hopefully. All right, take care.